Imagine for a moment that the huge shifts in our world, think 9/11, the 2008 financial crisis, even the recent pandemic didn't start with some big, obvious threat. What if these massive crises actually came from something incredibly small, almost trivial?
Yeah, the book we're looking at today, 10 Lessons for a Post-Pandemic World, it has this idea, the bad effect.
Right. It's this powerful concept how a tiny virus, something you wouldn't even think about, could just ripple outwards and change everything.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? That maybe the biggest dangers are the ones we just don't expect or aren't ready for.
Exactly. It suggests these crises, these sort of seizures, as the book calls them, they aren't just external shocks anymore.
No, they're baked into the system we've built, part of our international setup now.
And realizing that these things are part of our reality now.
Yeah.
That's why we wanted to really dig into this book.
Makes sense.
Our goal here is to pull out the most important insights for you. Kind of a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed on this.
There are some really surprising connections the book makes.
Absolutely. We'll get into those, keep the discussion lively. And, this whole approach, getting clarity from complex stuff, it's actually pretty similar to what we do with Mindful Moments over on our YouTube channel.
Ah, right. Using AI to analyze books?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about trying to spark a bit of reflection, some rational thought in this, information chaos we live in.
Okay, so getting back to the book's analysis, that contrast it draws between past epidemics and now is striking.
You mean like the Spanish flu?
Yeah, think about it. 50 million dead, a horrific number. But back then, they didn't have electron microscopes, no real antiviral treatments. Virology was just starting.
So they were vulnerable because they lacked the tools, the knowledge.
Right. But here's the twist the book explores. Despite all our science now, we might actually be more vulnerable.
That feels wrong, doesn't it? How does the book explain that?
It points to how connected we are. Our packed cities, constant international flights.
So the speed of transmission.
Exactly. A virus from anywhere can be everywhere else in less than a day. Our interconnectedness amplifies that bad effect globally.
So it's not just that outbreaks happen, it's how we handle them. That reminds me of that quote from Larry Brilliant.
Oh yeah, the physician who worked on smallpox.
Outbreaks are inevitable, but pandemics are optional. What's the lesson there for stopping things escalating?
Brilliant's point, and the book really hammers this home, is that while you can't stop every spark, you can stop the wildfire.
How?
Preparation, acting early, smart responses. It's about flattening the curve, not just for viruses, but for crises generally.
Like the smallpox campaign he was part of.
A perfect example. That took incredible global cooperation, even between Cold War rivals. Just amazing focus.
And the book says, okay, apply that thinking to climate change.
Right. We can't just wish it away, but we can lessen the impact, avoid the worst outcomes with smart, aggressive policies.
Even if things like, say, a carbon tax seem expensive up front.
The book argues those prevention costs are tiny compared to the economic damage from not acting effectively. Think trillions lost versus billions invested.
Makes sense.
And there's another layer. Building that resilience, being prepared, it actually fosters emotional stability in society.
How so?
When people feel their society is ready, is competent, they're more likely to be open, cooperative, less likely to retreat into fear when a crisis hits.
Okay, that leads perfectly into this other thing that jumped out at me. That Johns Hopkins ranking from late 2019, U.S. ranked #1 for pandemic preparedness.
I know, right? Just months before it all hit. And then by mid-2020, the U.S. had, over a quarter of the world's cases?
The gap is huge. How does the book explain that? What was missing?
It digs into this critical distinction. It wasn't about the amount of government. It was about the quality.
Quality, not quantity.
Exactly. The book points to places like Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore, often seen as lean, economically efficient states.
And they handled it well. Taiwan especially. Very few deaths early on.
Their success came from acting fast, being decisive, communicating clearly, hallmarks of a high-quality, trusted state. It wasn't about how big their government was.
Okay, but then you also had larger states like Germany, Denmark, Finland doing well too. So it's not just small, lean states.
Right. That's the key takeaway. The common factor wasn't size or structure. It was having a competent, well-functioning state that people trusted.
So good governance is almost like the best preparation you can have.
Seems like it. And this loops back to a core issue the book raises about the U.S., its sort of anti-statist DNA.
That cultural tendency to distrust government.
Yeah, which the book argues contributes to political deadlock. Power is so divided, contested, that getting big things done requires extraordinary effort or unusual circumstances.
Like needing a really strong leader or one party controlling everything.
Kind of. And this anti-statism, combined with a really sharp drop in trust in American society over the last 50 years.
Which the book links to inequality, right?
Yeah.
People feel the system is rigged.
Exactly. Trust just erodes. It undermines any sense of shared purpose needed to tackle big problems.
And then you look at places like Denmark.
Yeah, higher trust societies, they have more social capital, that kind of invisible glue that lets people work together effectively on shared challenges. It makes a huge difference in a crisis.
And these issues of trust and governance, they obviously spill over into the economy, especially with the pandemic forcing a rethink of market ideas.
Oh, definitely. The book notes this rise in populism on the right, moving away from pure free markets towards, protectionism, subsidies.
And on the left, the idea of socialism has shifted too.
Big time. It's less about state ownership now and more about government investment, bigger safety nets, serious climate action. Bernie Sanders pointing to Denmark, not Cuba, as his ideal.
That's a really telling example.
It highlights this sort of in-between model. The book uses that Denmark versus U.S. comparison.
Right, the trade-off. In Denmark, maybe you have, $15,000 less disposable income after taxes?
Something like that. But in return, you get universal health care with better results. By the way, free education all the way through university, extensive job retraining.
The state's spending way more on worker support than the U.S.
17 times more per GDP, the book says. It's just a fundamentally different social contract, different priorities.
Wow. And then there's the other massive shift. The pandemic accelerated our digital lives.
Huge acceleration. The book traces it from early computers to the internet age, but the pandemic just hit the fast-forward button.
That India example is incredible.
Isn't it? From 155th in mobile broadband in 2015 to consuming the most mobile data globally just a couple of years later.
Basically, hundreds of millions of people suddenly having powerful computers in their pockets.
A massive leap. And think about work. Tata Consultancy Services, huge Indian tech firm.
They're planned for 75% remote work globally by 2025.
Yeah. That signals a profound change for office space, for cities, for how we even think about work-life balance.
It opens up possibilities, but the book also flags potential downsides, right, like automation.
It does. It touches on this problem of leisure. If AI does more work, what gives human life meaning? What do we do?
A big philosophical question.
But the book frames it optimistically, suggesting maybe these digital and AI revolutions could actually enhance our humanity if we manage them wisely. That's the key caveat.
Okay, so digital life exploded. But what about physical places, like cities? I confess, I kind of thought the pandemic might be the end of the big city era.
A lot of people felt that way. But the book makes a strong case against it. Cities endure, they evolve.
Why? What's the argument?
History shows cities are engines of ideas, innovation, political change, social movements. They offer opportunities, freedoms.
Especially for women, the book notes, escaping more traditional rural constraints.
Right. And the book highlights really forward-thinking ideas like the 15-minute city concept in Paris.
Oh, yeah, I read about that. Mayor Hidalgo's plan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Making everything you need, daily work, shops, parks, healthcare reachable within a 15-minute walk or bike ride.
That sounds incredible. It totally flips the script on traditional urban planning that separates everything.
It's about integrating life back into neighborhoods, making them sustainable and livable. Very different.
And connected to that idea of physical places and movement, globalization. Another thing people said was dead.
Yeah, that narrative took hold early in the pandemic. Countries pulling inward, focusing on self-sufficiency, France, the U.S.
But the book says, hold on, it's not dead, it's just paused.
Exactly. Globalization, the movement of people, goods, capital, is a process that's been happening for tens of thousands of years. It argues the underlying drivers are still incredibly strong.
Like what?
Especially services, which are huge parts of modern economies, like the U.S., like 70%.
Right.
And the digital economy itself is inherently global. You can't really put borders on that easily.
So the momentum is still there underneath the surface noise.
Pretty much. And for most countries, engaging globally, trading, it's just fundamental to improving living standards. Isolation rarely works out well long term.
Which brings us to the big picture, the geopolitical landscape. The book argues the world is becoming bipolar, U.S. and China.
Seems undeniable looking at the trends. And America's pandemic response. Well, George Packer, writing in early 2020 that Americans woke up in a failed state, that resonated.
A really strong statement. But the U.S. still has enormous power, doesn't it?
It does. The book acknowledges that. Largest economy, the dollar's role, military strength. But the pandemic definitely exposed internal weaknesses, political division, and it hurt global perceptions.
It created this contrast, right? Internal problems versus enduring global clout.
Exactly. And then you had China. Initially, they definitely mishandled things, weren't transparent.
Right.
But then they managed to control the outbreak with incredible speed and scale. That display of state capacity was noticed globally.
Even while their rise causes anxiety for neighbors like India, Australia, Japan.
For sure. You see those countries rebalancing, working together more closely, even building defense ties with the U.S. It creates this tension.
Which leads to that crucial insight from the book. Bipolarity might be inevitable.
But a Cold War is a choice.
Why is that distinction so important? Why would a new Cold War be such a bad choice?
Because the book argues it would cripple cooperation on the huge issues we all face, climate, future pandemics, you name it. Problems no one country can solve alone.
It would just divert resources, create friction.
Exactly. Make the world less safe, less prosperous for everyone. It's a call for pragmatic cooperation over rigid ideology.
And that connects to the book's final, really powerful point, challenging the cynicism about international cooperation.
Yeah, reminding us about the leaders after World War II, Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, guys who had seen the absolute worst of conflict.
And yet they were the ones pushing for international institutions for free trade.
Their idealism wasn't naive. It was practical, born from hard experience. They understood that working together, even with adversaries, leads to better, more lasting solutions.
Common sense realism, almost.
Pretty much. The book even points to the EU managing to forge deeper integration, like issuing joint bonds in response to the pandemic crisis. A modern example.
So cooperation isn't just a nice idea, it's fundamental.
It's fundamental to how humans have succeeded, the book suggests. It's built into us, and it's our best bet going forward.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping up this journey through the book's lessons, we've seen how tiny things can spark huge crises. Why competent, trusted government matters more than size.
The massive shifts in the economy and digital life, the fact that cities aren't going away, globalization's enduring pulse.
And navigating this emerging bipolar world where cooperation is maybe more critical than ever.
Yeah, and that final thought to really mull over. Maybe the true realists are the idealists.
Explain that again.
That real progress doesn't come from just tearing down old systems and hoping for the best. It comes from the hard work, the political will to make the reforms we often already know are needed.
And cooperation is key to that.
It's the sensible path. It's how we tackle the big stuff. It's ingrained in us.
That's definitely something to think about. If these ideas got you thinking and you're looking for more ways to get clear analysis, do check out Mindful Moments on our YouTube channel.
Right? Using AI to break down complex books and ideas.
And be sure to listen to our podcasts for more discussions like this one, digging into important reads.
Definitely subscribe on whatever platform you're using so you catch every new release.
And if you found this valuable, please share it with a friend or colleague who likes to get up to speed on big ideas quickly.
If you want to dive deeper into this specific book, 10 Lessons for a Post-Pandemic World, there's a purchase link right in the description.
Thanks for joining us. Keep thinking critically about the fascinating, complex world we live in.